Welcome to the X-Men Task Podcast. My name is Willie Simpson.
My name is Sonia Rappaport.
Sonia, we are in Season 4 of X-Men Evolution, the final season. We're up to Episode 5, an episode called Uprising.
The Return of Spike.
Yes, featuring the return of Spike, and maybe, I guess, his best episode ever. Mm-hmm. It was really cool.
Yeah.
Before we talk about that, let's talk about the plugs. You can follow me on Twitter, @WillieSimpson. Join the X-Men Task Podcast Facebook group on Facebook. Always a fun time there. And lastly, if you want to support the show, best and only way to do so right now is to leave us a nice 5-star review on iTunes. Again, everyone who takes some time out of their day to do just that, it means a lot to me and Sonia, and we're very thankful. So, X-Men Evolution will take a temporary backseat, as has become the custom, because we like to talk about Loki. The latest episode there. They're up to episode 4. Mm-hmm. I'd say by consensus the most favorite episode of Loki thus far, and a lot of people are seeming to say the best episode yet of Disney Plus television, of all their Marvel shows that have aired.
Do you agree?
I don't know if it's the best episode, because I really did enjoy WandaVision quite a bit, and there are definitely moments in Falcon Winter Soldier I liked. But for the Loki show, I think it's the best episode. Mm-hmm. I think more than anything, it's the best episode because they subverted all the stakes they established in the very beginning of the show. When the show began, it was like, hey, this is the world of the Time Variance Authority, and it's ruled by these 3 alien overlords that have more power than any Infinity Stone. They control all time across all parallel dimensions, etc. Mm-hmm. And you're just told to accept all that. And you know, it was kind of easy to accept because most Marvel fans know that in the Marvel universe there's always a higher being than you know, the one you think is the highest being. Yeah. You know, Galactus trumps Thanos, for instance, and Thanos is trumped by these weird like extra gods like Eternity and characters like that. Yep. So there's always this like hierarchical levels of things. So you're like, oh, maybe the Time Authority, whoever they're controlled by, it's kind of like they're one of these like higher level beings. So in this episode, they do a lot to just like eliminate a lot of the explanations that have already been given about this thing and start you back at ground zero, which I think is a lot of fun.
Yep.
And I was enjoying the end of the episode when they pull down the Wizard of Oz curtain, so to speak. I don't know. What do you think of it? What stood out to you?
Yeah, I thought it was also really cool. In episode 3, they didn't do all that much we were talking about to move the storyline ahead necessarily. It was a lot of world building, relationship building.
It was the introduction of Lady Loki there. Mm-hmm. Sylvie. Right,
but thinking back on it, also she started to kind of poke holes in the TVA, you know, their dominance over everything, right. And that was a really good setup for this episode, because it's nice to kind of have like a lull in all the action, and then by contrast you have an episode like this where there's a lot of action.
Right. I mean, I did think the ending fight, which people on the internet pointed out was very reminiscent of Star Wars Episode 8, when Kylo Ren fights with Rey. Remember, they're fighting in the throne room with all those red guards. There's an element of that, them fighting together, fighting all these random TVA guards in front of the timekeeper people. And then the fact that, and just like in that movie where Kylo Ren kills Snoke out of nowhere, Sylvie kills the timekeepers, who in this case turn out to be robots.
Yeah.
So there was like weird allusions to that.
Okay.
Like that scene I thought was cool because they kill the timekeepers.
I feel like that's reaching, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know. It's reminiscent.
Okay.
It's not like they're like making an homage.
Yeah.
I think it's like the fight itself was boring. You know, them just doing karate. Like it's weird that Loki knows a form of hand-to-hand karate fighting. I know it's established that he has daggers.
It's established, but don't his powers not work in this realm?
He wasn't. I guess he wasn't using his powers. He's just using his fighting ability.
That's what I'm saying. Is that he has to use the fighting ability because his powers don't work in like the TVA.
Right.
Yeah. Area.
No, I understand. I just think it's lame. I think it's just like stupid when you have these random characters who aren't necessarily known for hand-to-hand fighting. They're just engaging in
it's the action.
What is a quote-unquote exciting hand-to-hand fight. But that aside, I did think all the plot details were quite cool. Again, like just subverting your expectations, killing off the main characters. I think there's a post-credit scene where after Loki is presumably killed, that, oh no, he's alive in another dimension with all these other Loki characters. Like all that, I think I think they would have been better if they let you believe Loki was dead for an episode for the purposes of suspense. Because I was saying, like, because I wanted to go with my original, well, one of the theories I put out there, which was maybe Tom Hiddleston dies in the show and the Sylvie character, I think the actor's name,
carry on as...
right, Sophia DiMartino, is the new Loki. And I like, oh, that'd be like, and even if that's not the case fully, letting you speculate that over at least one episode would have been interesting. But you know, Loki is alive, and there's other Lokis.
Like, to go back a little earlier in the episode, of the conceit that, you know, they established this whole thing that there's no variance on the timeline in the apocalyptic world because the world is about to end anyways.
Yeah.
But then in this one, the way the TVA found them and they didn't die.
The Nexus event.
Right, is that there was a Nexus event even though it was going to be an apocalypse.
Because they were about to make out with each other.
Because that's the thing. It's like, it's not even like a thing happened, really. It's like the thing that happened is that there was a mutual emotion or attraction between them, and that counts as an event. Yeah,
it's weird. I do think from a storytelling standpoint, it is a great gimmick they stumbled upon, that the only one Loki could ever find himself to love is a version of himself, which I think is quite hilarious.
Yeah.
You know, like, I think that's like a funny idea to play with it. I mean, you know, if you like Seinfeld, that happened a couple of times.
Right.
Where characters met versions of themselves, and at first they're in love, then they're repulsed by them. So, I mean, maybe that's going to happen to... maybe he'll think like, oh, wait, I really do love you, Sylvie, and then wait a second, I actually hate myself as well, so they're not going to get along. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it was just they sort of wrote themselves into a corner with them being stuck on Lamentus there, and there had to be some stupid reason as to how they're going to get out. And I think that reason's as fine as any, because at least it's funny.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but I mean, overall, the show is quite enjoyable. I mean, Marvel is fun when you go down the paths of like absurd science fiction, in this case time travel or parallel dimension hopping, whatever, like a combination of time travel and Sliders.
Right.
Sliders, what a foundational show for me as a kid.
I know, I loved that show.
There's another show, I taped every episode of the X-Men animated series. I taped every episode of Sliders until it became hard to find on TV because I forget if it moved networks or time slots or whatever. It got very difficult. And then they replaced like nearly the entire cast of Sliders, which was quite hard to fathom as a little kid. I was annoyed that I was like, you know, wondering what happened to various characters who were stuck on Cro-Mag planets or something. And Sliders is a show I think I tried revisiting because it was put on Netflix a few years ago, and I was not that interested.
No, hard to follow.
Didn't hold up. It was kind of cheesy and not as fun as discovering it the first time. I don't know. I'm sure there's still tons of Sliders fans out there. Anyway, Loki has elements of Sliders. I guess the thing I'm most excited about with Loki going forward is the introduction of the multiverse. Now we're getting the multiverse Loki characters, which I think is a preview for the Spider-Man series, and for Doctor Strange too. You're going to see variants of all these different people. Again, my ultimate theory is like the introduction of the multiverse is just a convenient way to recast characters down the line.
That could be.
Yeah, I think, and an excuse to like fix the Spider-Man universe and their weird contractual shit going on there. But yeah, I mean, like at the very end, you saw 4 Loki variants. You saw like classic comic Loki, who he's like an older man in wearing the like Jack Kirby originally drawn costume.
Yep.
Kind of like reminiscent
the antlers.
Right, yeah, reminiscent of the costumes we saw Scarlet Witch and Vision wearing in the Halloween episode, where it's just like cheap spandex and bright satin colors. You saw a black man playing Loki in the credits listed as Boastful Loki, and he's got a hammer of some kind.
Right.
I would like to think that'd be cool if he was a Loki who was worthy of Mjolnir or some variation of it. That'd be kind of interesting to see.
What his story would be like in relation to Thor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you see a little kid Loki who is a character from the comics as well. I don't really know that much about him. And then he's holding a crocodile Loki, which I saw a lot of people were speculating is a lot of fun that Marvel's slowly introducing the animal Marvel universe, which is quite extensive.
Very silly.
On the margins of Marvel stuff.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, I definitely had a Spider-Ham comic as a kid, or it was like in a Spider-Man comic as like a back like mini issue. And I was never a big fan of Spider-Ham. I know people were like amazed to see him in the Into the Spider-Verse movie.
Yeah.
I mean, but like I said, there is a wide variety of animals in the Marvel Universe. I mean, the most famous, I guess, Howard the Duck is... Like,
but he's not like a version of somebody else. He's his own.
Right, yeah. He was
character.
like... Do you know Howard the Duck was literally the most popular comic book character for a good period of time in the 1970s?
But
like
why?
a worldwide sensation. It just tapped into the zeitgeist. I don't know. He was like... he had like some kind of like weird... like Bart Simpson energy, you know what I mean? Just for the times, like irreverent, witty, like of the moment humor.
A real witty duck.
People just loved it. It was just, I don't think Marvel sold enough Howard the Duck shit, and then they made the movie that I'm sure imploded the fame, or was at the tail end of it. Yes, I mean that was like definitely, you know, Howard the Duck's like very much the definition of a sort of like 15 minutes of fame type phenomenon. And you know, it is funny that Marvel acknowledges Howard the Duck in their Marvel movies. He's just, again, another sort of ancillary character in the very fringe of post-credit sequences or whatever, and like a frame or two in the Endgame fight. It would be quite ballsy of them for one day to be like, all right, we're out of all this other content, let's go back to Howard the Duck. We've established him. And you see a Howard the Duck movie.
Right.
Yeah, let's get Howard the Duck right. He's like kind of in the line of Squirrel Girl to me. Although they tried making a Squirrel Girl show that never aired, I guess.
Yeah,
starring the AT&T phone girl,
right.
Milena Vinay Trub, whatever her name is. I would have liked to see that. I mean, I think Squirrel Girl's funny.
Yeah, I think that could have been like a good comedy, actually.
I think that the joke about Squirrel Girl is like you need to do her after you've established the entire MCU, because her gimmick is that she defeats the most heinous villain single-handedly that everyone else has troubles with. Like, she can beat Thanos, she can beat Galactus single-handedly. Like, the most unexpected, stupidest character with the power of squirrels can bring down Galactus.
Right, a real underdog story.
So you have to bring her in, like, in 15 years from now, when you could just, like, call back some of these villains that you've already done seriously, and have Squirrel Girl show up in, like, in some kind of joke series. All right. Anyway.
Too bad that was a miss.
Any other like final thoughts? Like, I mean, I am excited to see the 2 last episodes of Loki.
Yeah, me too.
They've really set you up.
Well, the next one at least, like, you know.
I mean,
based on what's happened so far,
Yeah.
I do think that that episode 6 might be a letdown.
Right.
But
A CGI fight between 2 characters that you don't really care, like Ravonna and.
They'll be back in some world where Loki, or there'll be something happens where Loki can use his powers again.
Yeah. He'll be shooting green lightning at somebody and. I don't know. I mean, I'm hoping...
But the next episode I'm excited for.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the case with most good serialized content, is that the penultimate episode is usually better than the actual finale. Like, all the major drama happens in the second to last episode, and the final episode is just about saying goodbye.
Wrapping things up. Right.
So, I mean, you know, we both feel that they're 0 for 2 for the finales. So hopefully Loki's a little cooler, and it gets, like, a more interesting ending. Again, it's like... How far does Marvel want to dip into their future plans in the sense of Doctor Strange 2 and Spider-Man 3, which are like the big, like, explosive movies that are going to deal with the fallout of all this stuff? It's like, do they really want to, like, show you Kang the Conqueror, for instance? I mean, they already cast that guy who's going to play him in Ant-Man 3. Do they, like, care to, like, reveal that at this point? Or they're just going to be like, no, let's just keep waiting for another time? I don't know. We'll find out. But... you know, let us know what you think if you're enjoying Loki thus far. You know,
any predictions are welcome.
Right? Yeah.
Flights of fancy.
Yeah. Give us some bold predictions on the Facebook group. Let us know what you really think is going to happen. I think it's time to be bold. They've really not given too many breadcrumbs about what could happen. So, I mean, there's one thing. They released a trailer for the finale, sort of, where they just show images of. Like, Loki is running for president or something in this new dimension called, like, President Loki. And I don't know what that means exactly, but who cares? We'll find out. Next Wednesday, I guess. All right. X-Men Evolution.
All right.
How does this one begin? The return of Spike, as you said.
Right, yeah. It's funny, just saying that now, it conjured the image of Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I don't know too many other humans named Spike.
Another show that I think, like, that meant a lot to me, but now it's just aging... Poorly. Yeah. It's a show that, too, I think could be rebooted. Interesting. Like, it's a show that could always come back. It doesn't have to be centered around Buffy at all. That's the nature of it, that a new Slayer arises and therefore you can have a whole new circumstance.
I think it's actually incredible how vampire content, it just like keeps going. We've talked about this before with like the Twilight series and stuff, but yeah, I think you're right. Buffy the Vampire Slayer could have yet another reboot.
Right. I mean, it would have to be minus Joss Whedon because he's been canceled out of existence.
Yeah, but also because the humor is so specific to Joss Whedon. That's what made it so successful, because it was a real time and place.
Of the time, and now it's like not as... I feel like when I got into the show in my mid-20s, which is well past its expiration date, but even I like the humor because it just... At the time, it felt kind of ironic to be enjoying this like late 90s humor. Right. Yeah. But then like now I've revisited again like briefly recently, and it's just not as entertaining. It's just something like more stale about it.
Yeah.
So
they'd have to punch up the humor in a more contemporary way.
Yeah. I think I don't know if they shouldn't reboot it. Just let it die. It's fine.
It's a lot of work. Anyways, so X-Men Evolution, season 4, episode 5. So we see on the news that another mutant dome has appeared over this ancient Chinese pyramid, and there's a mutant kid, in America or whatever, in Bayville somewhere, watching it on TV, and his mom comes in and is like, "Oh, don't watch the news, honey. Like, it makes you too upset." Yeah,
this kid has weird headaches that seem to be his plague. I mean, he also looks bad. He looks like he's not in great shape.
He's green.
He's green. He looks like his skin is rotting, I mean, should we tell the viewer?
Yeah, why not?
It's Leech.
Yeah.
It turns out his mom's name is Mrs. Leech, which I don't know if that's true to the comics or not, as far as the name of Leech's parents. I mean, Leech we knew quite well in the original X-Men animated series. He's one of the first Murlocs we're introduced to.
I don't think I really knew what his powers were in X-Men.
Right. I mean, they showed him have, like, light telekinesis. I forget if they actually showed him... Because I think he's a character, too, in the movies, in X-Men 3, the character that can cancel out mutant powers.
Yeah.
Whenever they draw his DNA to, like, make the cure.
That's right.
I don't know if that's explored in the original series as much. I don't remember. Because Leech comes back a few times. But we just see him... I just remember distinctly from the first episode he appears when Scott and Jean are on their date in New York City. Mm-hmm. And they catch Leech shoplifting an orange or something.
Yeah, that's
chase after him.
They make him kind of low power, I think, in the X-Men tasks.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a little kid, so...
Yeah, but here
all the Morlocks are kind of presented as just, like, pathetic mutants in a lot of ways. It's an interesting interesting sort of opposite thing, where the X-Men, not only are they powerful, they're also beautiful, and the Morlocks are just most of them have shitty powers, and they're ugly, and it just sucks. It's like, that's more realistic. Like, that's really should be, like, if you're telling a story about the X-Men, if, like, you had to, like, reboot the Marvel Universe, which they've done in different ways, like, you would really want to more start from the Morlock perspective than the, like, beautiful supermodel X-Men perspective, in terms of, like, trying to fit in with society.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, it just seems more realistic, like, more logical, like, that most mutants would have crappy powers where it's like, oh, my hand is green and purple, and it can turn into, it can turn into a bee's nest or something.
Right. Or like that guy that just looks like a bulldog.
Right, yeah.
Like, that's it.
Well, I'm sure he has super strength at least. But, right, he's like born a dog.
Right.
It's just crazy. Born a dog man. And it just seems like a horrible curse to, like, it just feel like most mutants would be cursed with just some horrible genetic mishap versus some, like, very useful, explosive, or, like, societally
dangerous
useful power.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. So, and born with, like, perfect, facial structure and other sort of beautiful genetics.
Right. Other blessings.
I mean, again, it goes into the whole thing of, like, why I think if you're setting up an X-Men movie, and we've discussed this before, have the X-Men wear that gaudy spandex, and have mutants in general wear that gaudy, colorful spandex, because I think it would be sort of a countercultural statement made by the mutant community that this is our culture. We think we're beautiful. We wear this, like, weird tight clothing with bright colors that show our muscles and boobs and ass and stuff.
Yeah.
Because we're not afraid to, like, flaunt our humanity. And it's not so much even about sexuality. It's just about, like, we have, we're, like, bold human beings.
But what about the Morlocks?
Well, they would be all... and that's my point. Like, so the X-Men are kind of, like, wearing that, and maybe, like, more out mutants like Dazzler or something are sort of like living out loud.
Yeah.
They're trying to like sort of pass in society a little bit, but the Morlocks are in tattered clothing and stuff, and they look up, they get rescued by an X-Man in like a big like bright spandex outfit, and they look up to him like, wow, you're a superhero.
Did they become empowered by the end?
Yeah. Maybe in our X-Men movie, the Morlocks actually move into the mansion.
Yeah.
They don't decide to just continue to live in the sewers.
Right, yeah. But, I mean, going back to Leech, living in a world where there are tons of mutants with very dangerous powers, he is kind of powerful if he can.
Yeah. Right, he's a powerful one, right? If he can cancel out other mutant power. His power seems to be more than that in this version, where he can...
He also, like, predicts the future a little bit. Like, whatever disasters are going to happen, like, to or as a result of mutants, he seems like he can get, like, a premonition of them.
Yeah, they do a good job setting him up in this episode. There's a lot of complexity to him.
Yeah.
All right, so Leech is watching TV. It's making him sad because there's a lot of anti-mutant hysteria going on. And then meanwhile, you see he's not quite a Morlock yet.
No, he just lives in an apartment with his mom.
Right, yeah.
But meanwhile, you see outside another mutant whose name is Lucid. I don't know if did you know him from before? I don't know. He's going out and scrounging for food in the garbage behind the diner.
I thought he was Leech at first.
I did too, because his face, the way he's drawn.
And he looks like the size of Leech from the original series.
Yeah.
Like in the original series, Leech looked like Kermit the Frog a little bit. Green little, like,
no
amphibian
nose, really.
face. Yeah, exactly.
Right. And Lucid gets hassled by some guys, like humans, that chase after him. Right.
So this is an episode that, like, we complained about the show a lot in the early seasons, that they completely removed the political aspect of the X-Men story, which is them dealing with the bigotry of mankind.
Right. They're finally getting into it.
They're like they're doubling down on it in this episode, and it's really good. They show a lot of human hatred and a lot of fear of mutants, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, and it's cut in with a lot of news reports and things. Like, you see how the media is fueling the fire for the humans getting angry about mutants.
Yes.
And, like, inspiring uprisings, basically. So, luckily, Spike sees what's going on with Lucid.
Spike, who we've not seen in a long time, since he retreated to the sewers himself.
And he's had some further mutations. His whole torso, upper body is covered in this armor.
Right,
now.
And he's got like a sort of like a bone helmet.
Like, it's like plates, like a dinosaur.
Yeah,
you know?
He's got some stuff going on his legs, and his mutation has seemed to evolve quite a bit.
Right. Aside from all that armor that's like built onto him at this point, now the spikes that he throws he can also like charge them up so they're flaming or they can explode.
Right.
He has some kind of like firepower.
Fire energy in them. And they come out of his feet too. He can cling to walls when he's running around.
That was awesome. I didn't think about that, because like that's the explanation of how Spider-Man climbs walls.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
like,
in the movie, there's two explanations.
Yeah,
In the first movies with Tobey Maguire, he's got these little barbed wires that come out of his hands,
like Velcro almost.
Right. In the comics, he somehow generates an electrostatic force that allows him to which makes more sense in explaining like how he sticks the stuff with clothing on.
Yes. And shoes.
Right. Yeah. How he could stick like through shoes, or I think that was probably a bit of a loophole in the Tobey Maguire ones, because it's like.
He's only using his hands, actually, but sometimes he has his spider suit on, so the spikes come through.
Well, theoretically, the spider suit is so thin that it would allow the spikes to come out, I guess. I mean, that was something in the comics, too, that the suit was really thin for a reason, so he could stick better. Mm-hmm. But he could still stick through. I think if he was wearing sneakers, he probably could stick to the wall.
Yeah.
I mean, don't quote me on that. But also, please feel free to correct me, because I'd like to know like the full extent of it. But anyway, Spike is sticky. Yeah. There's a lot of characters who can stick to walls in the Marvel Universe. Like Beast can do it, and Nightcrawler as well. And I'm sure there's more I'm thinking of. But like the two prominent X-Men can walk on walls.
Yeah, I don't know the explanation behind why they can do it.
Well, I think Beast's feet are a big part of his mutant power, especially like when he was in his early human form. His toes are so powerful that I think that you see like the way Jack Kirby draws them. It's like they just dig into the cement of a wall. And he climbs up.
Oh, so he's like making his own little footholds everywhere he goes.
Yeah,
and he's so strong.
Right, and Nightcrawler. It's funny. It's like one of those things. It's like I've always accepted. I've never really remembered like asking why he can stick to walls. It has to do with his feet as well, I guess, because they're kind of weirdly shaped. He's got like, instead of having feet with toes,
he's
got like
these
two
bird foot.
Right.
Like,
yeah, he's got some kind of weird
two toes
foot
in front, one thumb sort of thing in the back.
Yeah, I wonder if they have spikes in them too. I don't think so, but he could stick to walls based on his ambidextrousness and things. Mm-hmm. So I mean, he can also do it. He's probably more in line with Beast, if I had to guess. But again, let us know. Correct us in the Facebook
if anybody knows.
Because I'm genuinely interested.
We could Google it,
right.
But...
Well, we're in the middle of recording, and Googling something in the middle of recording means stopping the record, looking it up, editing it, and we're too lazy.
Anyway, so Spike can do that. He like gets little spikes out on his hands and feet, and that's pretty cool.
He's also just gone through regular puberty.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Like he's taller, he's older looking, and his voice is deeper.
I suspect it's the same actor. Again, we can Google this. I don't know, but I think it's the same voice actor.
Yeah, his voice isn't too much
the
deeper
same and stuff.
Right, but he does sound a little more manly than he did.
Yeah.
Less pipsqueaky.
Right. So Spike intervenes with the guys that are hassling Lucid.
I mean, that's the premise of the whole episode. Spike's a vigilante looking out in behalf of sort of oppressed mutants.
Right, and especially the Morlocks, because he feels like they shouldn't have to hide underground, and that's, he's developing a philosophy about it and trying to stand up for what's right for the mutants. But he does cause kind of a lot of like destruction, or not even destruction, but just like
he's drawing a lot of attention to himself, and the Morlocks are uneasy about it. Callisto, the leader, she's like, listen, just keep a low profile. We appreciate what you're doing, but we're afraid of being attacked over this bullshit. Mm-hmm. So, and in a way she's kind of accurate later on. But for now, Spike is not going to listen to that. He's in full like young righteous man mode.
Right.
So he has extensive superhero training too from the X-Men, so he's well equipped to do this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, I like that Spike, his evolution in the show is fitting with the title of the show, the premise.
Yeah.
X-Men Evolution. Like, he aged.
Right.
He
and you
changed.
saw what happened to him.
Right, yeah. It's like, I like that Scott and Jean graduated high school and became teachers at the school. The show
They're
is
not
showing
all,
you.
stuck in time.
Right, yeah. The show is showing you that there's, like, things are in flux.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Meanwhile, our cutaway scenes here are, it's not really comic relief this time, but I kind of like this better, is we're going back to Professor X and Beast, who are doing a little bit of further research about these domes. The
Apocalypse domes.
Right, that Apocalypse put around the pyramids, like the one in China that we saw in the newscast at the beginning, but also the Mayan pyramid that we saw in previous episodes. So Beast discovers that the domes aren't just like semi-domes over the ground. They also extend underground, so they can't like tunnel down underneath or anything like that.
The Professor X and Beast they think they have to deal with this dome issue. They know it's not complete. The world's military is trying to figure out what to do, but their only solution is to bomb them. And later on, there's a scene where Beast observes that the Chinese military is essentially. I think the implication is that they've nuked the dome, because the dome remains intact, but Beast says like miles around the dome have been flattened. Mm. I mean, the Chinese, they do mention that the Chinese military...
They bomb it, definitely. I don't know if it's a nuke or not. But...
Well, he says that like the whole entire surrounding area has been flattened, which leads me to believe that they used their most powerful bomb. Mm. But whatever. The point is... the
domes like reflect and amplify the power of whatever gets shot at it. So.
Right. So they're worried about that. And then we're introduced to some new mutants again, which is always fun to visit. Magma and Cannonball are just out and about. They're... have their school books. They're worried about studying, but they're noticed by a bunch of local teen bigots, who it turns out the leader of them is Duncan.
Yeah, right. I didn't recognize him at first.
Right. It was kind of a big reveal later in the episode when Jean calls him out by name. I'm like, oh shit, that is Duncan, because he just looks like a generic teen blonde boy. Mm-hmm. He didn't like remind me of the character Duncan.
I know, but after dating Jean all that time, you would think that he would have a little more understanding and tolerance about mutants.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, remember when it's revealed that Jean's a mutant, Duncan first tries to say like, hey, I'll still date you, but like help me like cheat on my tests.
Yeah, right. He tries to exploit her powers.
Right, and she's completely repulsed by him. So he just seems like a big idiot. So of course he would fall into being a mutant hating bigot, I guess.
Right.
But anyway, there's like a scuffle between Magma and Cannonball and these teen bullies, and they're afraid. And like Magma threatens to burn down Duncan's convertible. And it's just like a big stare down. But then Spike again appears and sort of tells like the two younger mutants to like seek cover and run away. Mm-hmm. And he ends up dealing with the bullies. Well, he actually trashes their car.
Yeah, he explodes it.
Yeah,
with his flaming spikes.
Right.
I don't know. This one thought maybe there was going to be some kind of like moral ambiguity with it, because they didn't really need his help. Like, they are members of the X-Men.
Right. They're actually trying to deal with it the right way by not threatening to destroy their property and just trying to say, like, just go away.
Right.
And Spike he escalates the situation.
Right.
Though Magma and Cannibal are actually appreciative of the effort from Spike.
But word gets back to Professor X, and he's like, all right, we gotta, someone needs to go talk to him. Like, he used to be an X-Man, and Storm steps in and is like, yeah, I should have gone and looked for him a long time ago. And,
right, yeah. Storm feels regret over the way she dealt with him.
But Professor X doesn't want her to be the one, because he feels like with a family connection, maybe it's too close or something.
He won't be receptive to that kind of message right now.
He sends Wolverine instead.
Yeah, Wolverine's not thrilled about it. He's reluctant, but he agrees. Another thing worth noting is that Spike, he sort of throws fire on the situation too by telling the bullies to, like, let the world know that I'm here to protect the mutants from bigotry in Bayville.
Right.
And so the bully guys, they just end up calling the cops.
Of course.
Right.
Even though they started it, but still.
Yeah. Then there's another little subplot with Nick Fury. He comes and he gets Trask, the Sentinel program director guy, out of prison. Mm-hmm. He's like, S.H.I.E.L.D. needs you to restart the Sentinel program just in case this dome situation goes south. So it's showing that the Marvel's deep state is worried about the dome situation so much that they get a criminal like Trask out, and that's probably going to be trouble for the X-Men too down the road.
Yep, most likely. Sentinels are never a good idea. Meanwhile, Wolverine is in the sewers looking for Spike, and he's being tracked by the Morlocks. And he says, like, listen, I just want to talk, Spike comes out to have a chat with him, and he's like, Logan, like, listen, you can't tell me that this is wrong. I'm defending people who need help. You would do the same thing in my situation. And Logan's like, yeah, I probably would.
Right, so Spike just runs away. It's kind of actually a good little scene. It's realistic. Like, Logan doesn't get too mad at him, and Spike is not really going to just stop because he's told to.
Right.
So he runs off. Meanwhile, Spike does something that shouldn't be confrontational, but is in this very, like, inflamed world they live in. Mm-hmm. He goes to the grocery store and is just buying groceries because he doesn't want to get his food out of the trash like the Morlocks. And the grocery store clerk is like, I have the right to refuse service. And he's like, and Spike's like, on what grounds? He's like, because you're scaring my customers. And it seems like, a lot of bullshit and also legal on the grocery clerk's part. So Spike just throws the groceries on the ground. And as he's leaving, there's the mob at the grocery store is on the side of the clerk. They're anti-mutant. Right,
but also Leech and his mom are in the store at the same time. So they start getting angry about mutants in general. They're angry at Spike. They get angry at Leech and his mom. And
it's a horrible scene because a woman grabs Leech from his mother's arms and, like, starts shoving him out the door, too.
He, like, runs, under some shelving to try to hide and not get hurt. And the shelves almost, like, fall on top of him, and they almost really hurt him, but Spike catches it. And kind of like, I thought this was kind of unnecessary. He shoots a bunch of flaming spikes into the wall next to them to create like a hole for them to exit. Right. But it was like a pretty small store. I feel like they could have just exited out of the door.
I think so too, but he's so angry at the store and the people there that he's just making a point of like, fuck your store.
Right.
I mean, it's like such a heartbreaking scene when you see that woman grab Leech from the mother's arms. It's like, you get the fuck out of here too. It just shows you how evil sort of intolerance, bigotry, and racism can be when people have like lost their fucking minds over it.
Yeah.
That they would just grab children and just treat them like garbage, and they don't care. They've just been totally overwhelmed by their fear and their insanity. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was that scene stuck out to me as being
it was gripping,
pretty like just vile and you're right, and dramatically gripping. Mm-hmm. So Spike Spike picks up his groceries and pays for them as he
just leaves money on the counter and goes. Well, the local Bayville news is like really riling people up to be afraid.
They're showing riled people up. It's hard to say exactly, but there's a montage of people and they're freaking out over mutants in Bayville.
Duncan starts leading a counter vigilante attack where they're like, him and his like jock friends are bombing the sewers.
Like literally, they've got these weird grenades and they've got these weird guns that they somehow like these weird laser guns.
Yeah, that was a big surprise. I don't think we've seen tech like that too much just amongst civilians.
No, I think it's because they didn't want to show them using actual guns.
I'm sure,
Censorship for a children's cartoon. But it looked like they had power tools. At first, like, oh, that makes sense. They're getting power tools that like nail guns. But no, they shoot some kind of weird electric energy from them.
Right, like yellow and orange lasers.
Right. There's also protests outside the X mansion and outside the Brotherhood mansion too. People like, they know that's where like prominent mutants are, and they're not happy about it. We don't see the Brotherhood in this episode though.
Right. Yeah. Meanwhile, this like gang of kids that's bombing the sewers and like almost kills Spike in the process. Basically,
right. They're finding every sewer manhole cover and just dropping bombs, like pretty powerful ones. And Spike is almost caught in one.
We see Leech like in his home having a headache, so like he knows that something bad is about to happen.
Right. Spike's been chased out of the sewer himself, and he's being like run into an abandoned building. And Leech is kind of, like you said, he's having a headache and kind of instinctually knows to go there.
And then, like, the big fight breaks out, basically.
Right. And people are springing into action. The X-Men suit up at the mansion and they fly over for help. And then the Morlocks, too, decide to help Spike as well.
Led by Callisto.
Right, yes. The Morlocks get there first. At first, it looks like Spike's taking care of all these guys pretty easily. But then he's kind of overwhelmed when the Morlocks show up. But then the X-Men show up too, and they, Cyclops starts blasting them from a plane.
Yeah.
And Jean is using her telekinesis.
Yeah, she has like a confrontation with Duncan.
Right. Yeah, she's like completely disgusted by this guy now. She can't believe that they used to date.
Yeah. And then Leech shows up at like the end of this fight sequence.
And it's been mentioned that he's been having these severe headaches that are ruining his life. More than his sort of decrepit skin or whatever, his green rotting skin.
Right.
But he unleashes like intense power.
I like the animation in this, the way they show it's like a ripple.
Look, Doctor Strangey or Wanda-y, like a witch-like power.
Yeah.
It cancels out all the mutant powers in the area. It also crashes a helicopter and takes out all the electricity in the area too, so disabling the bullies' guns. So it seems to just be doing more than stopping mutant power.
Yeah, Spike, like all his armor, his like embedded Spike armor or whatever it is, like just falls off his body basically,
or shrinks back into it or something.
Logan opens his eyes and it's like there's no lasers. He can just have his eyes open.
Cyclops.
I mean Cyclops.
Right.
Yeah.
And Logan, he pops his claws and he makes a comment saying like, yeah, my powers are canceled, because I think the implication that he's in pain for having his claws popped out. So now he doesn't have the mutant healing factor healing
he's just
the wounds.
A tough guy.
Yeah. Sucks for him in that moment.
Ugh, gross.
Right. Yeah, so I mean the day is like more or less saved. Storm again tries to get Duncan to come back to the mansion and he refuses. But Storm does let him know that she's proud of him.
Not Duncan, Spike.
Oh, Spike, yeah, that's right. Yeah, Duncan. Yeah, Storm lets Spike know that she is proud of him. And then we cut back to...
It's like a justice moment for Spike, sort of. He's like, like, I have the option to go back to the mansion or something, but all these Morlocks don't, which I just thought was funny in juxtaposition with the X-Men tasks, where Storm does actually invite all the Morlocks to
I think
go live
they've
in
invited
the
a couple of
mansion.
times.
But I guess in this series that hasn't happened.
We will only come to the surface when peace between mutants and humans have been achieved.
Right.
That's their excuse, like presenting a set of circumstances that will never happen.
Right, exactly. But in this continuity, Spike is just like, no, if they don't get to live in the mansion, neither do I. I'm staying with my people.
Right. I mean, it's a good arc for Spike, who's a character. He starts off pretty stupid. He's a bit like Poochie, as we said in the past, where he's like a skateboarding, basketball, dunking.
Yeah, he doesn't have much dimension to him in the beginning.
Right. He's just like an amalgam of like trendy things.
But as his powers have evolved,
right now he's got a lot of depth.
So
to
has
him.
his personality.
Right. Yeah. He's cool.
Yeah.
So he's off being his own kind of hero. And then you cut to outside of Mrs. Leach's apartment. Professor X shows up and he offers young Leach the chance to join the X-Men, which he's happy about. Leach is. But the mother, we don't know what her position is.
Right.
She's kind of afraid for her son.
So I don't know if we'll see him again, but we know, like in other continuities, he joins the Morlocks, not the X-Men. So
right, yeah, right. I mean, I'm not the biggest like Leech head.
I don't know if there are.
I'm sure, yeah. There's got to be definitely like big Morlock fans out there. They have a lot of storylines in X-Men throughout the years.
Yeah,
so,
maybe we will get a TV show about them one day. That would be cool.
I think that's a good idea.
That would be awesome.
I think that's like a good. I think
it would be a good like entry point into mutants and X-Men and stuff too.
Yeah,
because then it's like you test the waters a little with what kind of storylines you can do with mutant abilities and and like this kind of like social upheaval sort of stuff.
You get the plight of them in a more interesting way, and you could show a contrast between them and the regular. I think that's how I would pitch it anyway. I'd want to show the different like strata of mutant class, so to speak. You've got your like sort of horribly afflicted, cursed mutants that have to live in the sewers, and then you've got your beautiful mutants that fight for justice, and you've got your evil mutants of both strata as well too. Some are like also like hideous and evil, and they're sort of hidden, and others are like more beautiful, like the Hellfire Club, that they operate in the highest rungs of society, like manipulating things. So it's like an interesting. There's a lot of like.
I would like to see that TV show.
Hellfire Club. Or the Morlocks. Yeah.
Well, I think either both.
No. But... If you do the Morlock show, I think you have the Hellfire Club be a big part of it.
Yeah,
I think that'd be like a good like contrast within that universe.
I'm not gonna hold my breath though.
Well, I don't think you have to hold your breath. But
I don't think it's coming soon at all.
You don't know. I think of all our half-brained ideas, this might be the most full-brained of them. This is a pretty a Morlocks TV show. I think it works. So I'd be interested to get to more about Callisto too. I always liked that character.
Yeah, me too.
And then it's like with the Morlocks, you have some famous ones, and then you also have like you could just do random ass ones too that people either don't know about, very obscure ones, or just make up whole cloth. You're not upsetting anyone with the Morlocks, is my point. Like, you upset people when, like, Wolverine's costume is not, like, what you expect it to be, And it's like, is the actor too tall or something? But, like, when it's the Morlocks, it's like, no one would give a shit. If the
Leech is too tall.
I prefer the X-Men animated series Leech versus the X-Men Evolution Leech, and I'm a little disappointed that they went in that direction in the Morlocks TV show. Like, you could see that fan being upset.
Yeah, the leech heads you were talking about.
Yeah, those leech heads. So let us know if you're a hashtag leech head out there. And that is all I have for this episode. Sonia, any final thoughts before we go?
I hope we see a Morlocks Christmas.
One day, in a better world. All right, good night, everybody.
Good night.